Miracles are not just for healing.
Are you a cleric or something?
They're also for destruction. I may be a Dark Souls speedrunner, but I've never actually done an all bosses speedrun where I use miracles to take them all out. So when I polled my Patreon community about what weapon class speedrun we should do next, I was surprised to see miracles win in a landslide victory. And I got to work to figure out how to optimize our route. If you're new here, we've been doing a segmented speedrun series focused on different weapon classes to see just how fast each type is for clearing all bosses in Dark Souls. So far, here's what the leaderboard looks like. And today, we're gonna add a new run to this list. Talismans are technically a weapon class, right? Though I think miracles, as well as sorceries and pyromancies are all fair game. And if you haven't seen one of these videos before, the rules for the run are as follows. 1. No glitches. Since these speedruns are designed to show off the weapons themselves, these runs will be glitchless, according to the Souls speedrunning rule set for glitchless speedruns, which you can basically think of as no major glitches. 2. Use the weapon. We will be using the weapon type itself to deal about 99% of all the damage in the run to stay true to the spirit of the run itself. But I am not restricting myself to only using damage from the weapon in question, as there will be a few things that are greatly sped up by using other sources of damage. But the large majority of the damage being dealt in the run must come from the weapon itself, this run being the Talisman casting miracles. And 3, kill all bosses. There are 26 bosses in Dark Souls 1, including the Artorias of the Abyss DLC, and we will be defeating all of them. If you're interested in more content like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me. We recently hit a big milestone of 10,000 subscribers, but let's see how big we can make that number by the end of the year. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get into the run itself. Starting off, we're going to be selecting the Cleric class for some obvious reasons, along with the Master Key. One being that we'll be able to collect a free talisman in the Asylum, another being that the Cleric class starts with the most amount of faith. This is not only important because our damage sources will be scaling with this stat, but we also need to get to 25 faith as soon as possible, and the extra levels are quite helpful with this. Unfortunately, since this class does not start with any offensive miracles, we will have to take out the first boss of the game with the starting weapon, the mace. It can't be avoided, but at least we're on theme with the Cleric class itself. We'll run past Asylum Demon, collect our shield and weapon, collect the Estus and upstairs key from Oscar, then acquire the Canvas Talisman and proceed through the fog wall for Asylum Demon. As always, a well-placed jump attack in the middle of his face will deal some extra damage to the boss, and for this weapon, 2 R1s and an R2 is enough to take him down. And from here on out, we'll be able to actually use miracles as our damage source for the remaining 25 bosses. After quitting out on the door to skip the opening animation, we are free to leave and enter the rest of Lordvessel. Starting off the run, we are in a unique situation compared to most routes where there is a very limited amount of options available for us to deal damage. We want to acquire an offensive miracle, and the only one we can really get this early in the game that fits this run is Lightning Spear from the Sunlight Altar in Undead Parish. Because of this, we will be taking the path through Valley of Drakes for some item collection, as we need to get some souls in order to level 25 faith to actually interact with the Sunlight Altar. There are other paths we could take for souls, but this makes the most sense, especially since we also want to collect a few other things while going through this way. First, we'll pick up this 1k soul after unlocking the door to Valley with the Master Key. Then, next to the Undead Dragon, we'll pick up the Dragon Crest Shield and a 2k soul while avoiding the dragon's attacks as he wakes up. This shield's high fire resistance will be useful much later on. We also want to grab the very powerful Red Tearstone Ring on top of this tower next to this gathering of lightning drakes that we'll have to juke. If you're unfamiliar, this ring gives the player a 50% increase in damage whenever below 20% HP. But due to how Dark Souls calculates resistances, it will essentially give us double damage whenever active. This is arguably the most powerful item in the entire game, as long as you can avoid getting hit during the boss fights. Rolling off the tower and avoiding the lightning drakes, once again, we're basically home free to enter the elevator that will take us to Darkroot Basin. During the downtime of riding the elevator, this is a good time to pop the souls that we just picked up in the valley and equip our fancy red tearstone ring, aka RTSR. We need some more souls in order to get our goal of 25 faith, so while grabbing the nearby Grasscrest shield, we'll perform a quit out in order to set up a very nice gravity kill on the Black Knight nearby for the 1800 souls he drops without having to lift a finger. We're currently sitting at 6,900 souls. Nice. But we need around 9,000 in order to get to 25 faith. Luckily, there's a boss nearby, Taurus Demon, which we can take out without having to use any damage sources whatsoever, who will also drop 3,000 souls for us. But before that, we'll make a quick stop nearby to pick up the longbow, which will be helpful for a few things throughout the run. Now we can enter Hovel's Tower from the bottom and make our way up to Taurus Demon from below. I honestly think this is a pretty interesting early game route, as I don't think I've ever taken this specific path through the game for a speedrun before, but it makes perfect sense for this run due to the limited amount of offensive miracles in the game. Exiting Hovel's Tower, we climb up the stairs and enter the Taurus Demon fight. Here we're going to perform an action queued setup in order to time our approach in just the right way so that Taurus Demon will do a jump attack towards us at just the right time, sending him straight to his death. That was easy. Taurus drops us a homeward bone, which will come in handy, and eventually 3,000 souls as we run down the Hellkite Bridge. As a result of this early game pathing, we have not encountered Hellkite and Undead Berg yet, so we can run across here without having to worry about him whatsoever. Reaching the end of the bridge, we'll pull this lever to open the gate and perform a quit out to reset the nearby crossbow hollows, or else they could potentially interrupt us in the middle of leveling at the bonfire. Here is where we will take the souls we've spent the early game collecting and dump them all into Faith. Then just outside is the Sunlight Altar, where we can join the Covenant and receive the first tier reward, Lightning Spear. Unfortunately, this is the highest tier of miracle we will receive from this Covenant, as getting to the next tier is absolutely not worth it for a glitchless run. Luckily though, Lightning Spear will be plenty good enough for most of the bosses throughout the whole run. Now that we have a proper damage source, we can begin our early game boss routing, which starts with ringing the 2 Bells of Awakening. That means our first target will be the Bell Gargoyles in the nearby church, but before we head there, we're going to make our way towards the Undead Parish bonfire next to Andre the Blacksmith. On the way, we also made sure we picked up some alluring skulls and then got past the gate before it closed on us. These skulls will be useful for a strat later on. Coming to the parish bonfire, we'll attune our lightning spear during the rest animation, then make our way towards the church. On our way, we'll do our first RTSR setup of the run, backstepping an attack from this Baronique Knight. The attack we got is good RNG, as it's pretty fast, but we are just barely above the HP threshold needed to activate the ring, so we'll need to make sure to block an attack from an enemy ahead, as the Grasscrest shield doesn't block 100% physical damage, so a tiny bit of chip damage will put us in range. We were two-handing our shield for this room to knock an enemy out of the way, but didn't end up needing to, and can switch back to a normal configuration for the boss. Lightning Spear has a pretty long wind-up at base dexterity, but we can start it up and keep walking to activate the boss fight and get in a shot coming right out of the skipped cutscene. 2 spears is enough for the first gargoyle, and then just 1 more spear for the second gargoyle to finish them off. I got tagged by a single fire breath hitbox here, but luckily the Grasscrest shield blocked just enough damage to prevent a death. And now we're free to climb the ladders up to ring the first Bell of Awakening. We won't drop down to Oswald to buy any bones as we won't end up needing them, so we can just immediately use our homeward bone from Taurus Demon to get out of here and keep our souls. Spawning back in at the Undead Parish bonfire, we will continue with our goal of ringing the Bells of Awakening and proceed to the elevator that will take us back to Firelink Shrine on our way to the second bell located in Blighttown. But first, we'll drop down and pick up these fire bombs tucked in this corner, and then rest at the Firelink Shrine bonfire, dumping our souls into more faith. After ringing the bell, we'll still have stuff we want to do in this area, so we want to warp back to this bonfire. We'll also kick off Lautrec on our way, so we don't lose the Firelink bonfire later after ringing the bell, and also get a nice ring for our efforts to increase our max HP, stamina, and equip load. Unfortunately, we'll only have this ring for a short period of the run, but it'll be nice while we have it. Heading into Blighttown through the back entrance, we can do some fancy parkour to descend down to the water wheel and heal up. Then try to time our drop to the swamp in a way that lowers our HP enough that the poison tick from the swamp will put us in our TSR range just in time for the next boss fight. We're just gonna have to make sure we take out Quelaag fast enough that the poison tick doesn't kill us before we can put her down. Luckily, that's not too big of a problem, as Lightning Spear does pretty good damage even for a boss that is normally a little tanky this early in a run. It's a little hard to free aim the Lightning Spear shots, but if you can hit the human part of the boss, it will not only stagger her, but also deal additional damage. Overall, she goes down pretty fast and we can heal before the poison kills us. We're now free to ring the second Bell of Awakening. Unfortunately, since we don't have the Lordvessel, we don't want to rest at the nearby warpable bonfire as we don't want to have to climb out of Blighttown. So we'll have to come back through here later on. We don't have a homeward bone right now, but the game will put one in our inventory after the bell ringing cutscene, so we can just use that one to keep our souls and return to Firelink Shrine. Now that the bells are rung, Sin's Fortress is open, but we don't want to go that way just yet, as we would literally not have enough spells to take out the Anor Londo boss, Ornstein and Smo, as they are fairly resistant to Lightning Spear. So instead, we're going to go on a bit of a side quest with the group of clerics that will spawn in Firelink Shrine after Capra Demon is defeated, which is where we're heading now. We'll do some parkour called Lower Undead Berg Skip so we can take on Capra Demon, dodging the enemies on the way. This fight is a little scuffed as always, and we'll use our fire bombs to take out the dogs as Lightning Spear is a little too long of a windup for them, and we want to make sure we have enough casts to take out both Capra Demon and Gaping Dragon. Without RTSR, Capra Demon goes down in just 3 spears, which gives us 7 remaining for Gaping Dragon. We technically don't need to take out Gaping Dragon yet for what we're trying to accomplish here in the early game before Anor Londo, but since we're already here to take out Capra, we might as well take out Gaping Dragon as well so we don't have to come back. We need RTSR for this fight so we have enough spells to defeat the boss, but this is one of the most annoying sections of the game to get a consistent HP setup, so you kind of have to play it by ear. With the HP I have here, I know that I can complete my setup by running into an attack from one of these slimes on the ground. Entering the Gaping Dragon fight, he is likely to start with his slam and charge attack, which is good because that's exactly what we want. His floppy head is exposed, and if we can hit it, we'll do extra damage. 2 well-aimed lightning spears at the start do a big chunk of damage, and then we can just run back towards the wall to outrun his charge, throwing spears as he approaches. This is a pretty easy boss fight overall with this setup. You just need to be able to free aim the lightning spears well enough to hit him in the face. Once again, we don't have any homeward bones yet, but we can wait a few seconds to get one from defeating the boss and bone back to Firelink Shrine and keep our souls. Upon reload, we'll go ahead and rest to spend our souls on some more faith, as the extra damage will be important in this next section. The faith scaling is really good all the way up to 50, and we're already at 43. Now that Capra's taken care of, you'll see there's a group of clerics that have appeared in Firelink Shrine. If we continue into the catacombs and defeat Pinwheel, 3 of them will appear in Tomb of the Giants as part of Rhea's questline, and that is our current objective. On the way to the catacombs is the perfect time to grab these homeward bones in a chest, then proceed into the skeleton graveyard. This next section is definitely the slowest part of this route overall, as we're simply trying to unlock Rhea's shop in order to buy Wrath of the Gods, because we need the extra damage source in order to defeat ONS. Obviously though, since we don't have the Lordvessel, we won't be able to rest at a warpable bonfire during this stretch, so we'll have to run back through this section again later on in the run, which will cost us probably 2 minutes, but we can't avoid it. Pulling the lever to open the passage, we'll quit out to skip the animation and de-aggro the skeletons behind us, then continue. We can do some easy drops to get through this area pretty quickly and use them to set up our HP for RTSR. We're going to need to kill the boss and 2 NPCs, so we definitely want the extra damage from the ring. Even though we only need 2 lightning spears to defeat Pinwheel thanks to our 43 faith, this is still a pretty scary fight because of how long the cast animation is on this spell. But we managed to make it out unscathed and use 1 Estus charge to set up our HP for the upcoming clerics. We need to take out the 2 guys who are aggroed in the upcoming pit that Patches usually kicks you into in order to rescue Rhea and unlock her shop. But instead of letting Patches kick us in, we'll just drop in to set our HP back into RTSR range and throw alluring skulls to lure the clerics away from us while we launch lightning spears at them. Two spears is enough to kill each of them, and once they're down, we can speak to Rhea to progress her quest line and then bone out of here. After respawning in Firelink, it's now time to make our way towards Sin's Fortress and Anor Londo. So we'll take the elevator up towards Undead Parish and use this downtime to pop a boss soul. Now that Rhea has been saved from the Tomb of the Giants, she has become a merchant in the church, and we can buy Wrath of the Gods from her for 10,000 souls. She also happens to drop a better talisman for us, so unfortunately, she has to die. 2 lightning spears will drop her, and we can pick up her ivory talisman, which we'll be using for the rest of the run. The damage difference between this talisman and the canvas talisman isn't huge, but it's definitely worth it. We'll continue towards Sin's Fortress and skip the parish bonfire on the way, as we don't need to attune Wrath of the Gods just yet. Entering Sin's, we'll take an arrow from the first trap to begin setting up our health for RTSR. Another arrow later on will finish the setup for us. Going through Sin's itself is pretty straightforward though, as we'll just move between the pendulum cycles as fast as we can and then do a quit out to skip this boulder coming down on this pathway. After reloading, we'll activate the next arrow trap and take 1 more hit to finish our setup for Red Tearstone Ring. Then make our way all the way up to Iron Golem. With RTSR, this is a pretty trivial fight, as 1 lightning spear is enough to stagger him, and then a second will knock him down off the arena to his death. Entering Anor Londo, we're going to skip taking the first bonfire in this area. We're going to need it eventually though, as it will be our warp point for coming back to Duke's archives later in the run. But we'll be able to acquire this bonfire through other means, so it'll save us a bit of time to just ignore it for now. On the first elevator, we'll pop another boss soul and heal up, then jump down and proceed to the rafters section. This ladder is probably the most dangerous part of this section, as it's faster to just ignore the enemies here and cross our fingers that we don't get hit by a bunch of daggers as we're climbing it. Then we just need to avoid 1 more painting guardian next to the chandelier and we're home free, as we can do this jump to skip the second half of this section and go straight to the fog wall. We'll equip our mace here as it will be useful for getting past the Silver Knight archers ahead, depending on what RNG they give us. Then we'll turn the rotating staircase to access the second half of the area, and then we'll rotate it once more and drop down to take the Darkmoon Tomb bonfire in order to have access to it as a warpable bonfire later on. Now is a good time to use our souls to level up attunement so we can add another spell, and then finish leveling our faith to the desired level of 50. Then we'll pick up the Ring of the Sun's Firstborn, which will boost the damage of our miracles by 20%. And then we'll take the rotating staircase back up and do a trick where we touch the stable ground off of the elevator and quit out as soon as we do, which will send the elevator back down as it doesn't fully complete its animation. This will allow us to skip having to call the elevator back down again later on in the run. At this point, our build is nearly complete, which is definitely one of the big advantages of using a spell-based route such as this one. With melee weapons, especially ones that don't use a simple upgrade path like Twinkling Titanite, you lose a lot of time by having to acquire upgrade materials as well as not being fully maxed out early on, so the boss fights are also not as quick as they could be. But with this route, we're almost at full power. There is one more piece of gear to add to increase our damage, and we'll be doing some additional level ups for a bit more faith scaling for certain breakpoints and other things to support our build further, but we're already really strong. Coming up, you'll see the mace in action, as in this run, the Silver Knight archer ahead doesn't drop his great bow immediately, so we get to walk right up to him and whack him. The mace staggers in one hit, so a few swings is enough to push him back to fall off and make way for us. On the fog wall, we'll remove our ring of favor and protection for the sun ring, and then use the Silver Knight ahead to lower our health for RTSR. Dropping down from here, we'll finish our HP setup, and we're ready to take on Ornstein and Smo. Here we'll get our first taste of the power of Wrath of the Gods, as we can take out Ornstein with just 2 casts. We have one more Wrath left over for Smo, but we'll start out with a Lightning Spear since we can throw it at him from a distance, then get in our third cast of Wrath. And then we just take every opportunity to throw more spears at Smo. Our damage is quite good, so it doesn't take very long to finish off Super Smo. Now that they're down, we can go up the elevator and open the doors to Guinevere to acquire the Lordvessel, shooting her with our bow to skip having to speak with her. We can also activate a Homeward Bone as she is dying, skip the cutscene, warping away right as we obtain the Lordvessel. Now that we have the Lordvessel, we can warp between bonfires and eventually dispel the golden fog gates blocking access to later areas of the game. So now our goal is to reach the Artorias of the Abyss DLC and clear the 4 bosses within. But before we can do that, we need to go on a bit of an extended side quest. We'll start off by going to Firelink Shrine on our way to Stray Demon, popping a boss soul as we wait for the elevator to send us up. Since we skipped taking the Anor Londo bonfire earlier in the run, we want to do a sequence where we obtain the peculiar doll from the Asylum, then warp back to Darkmoon Tomb and take out Gwendolyn, then enter the Painted World to take out Priscilla, which will then allow us to get the Anor Londo bonfire for free. And of course, while we're in the Asylum to pick up the doll, we want to go ahead and kill Stray Demon while we're here. This is a pretty fast all bosses routing feature that can be taken advantage of in a run like this, where we're already full power, so we don't mind doing Stray, Gwendolyn, and Priscilla this early on. But ultimately, all this does is allow us to skip taking the Anor Londo bonfire earlier in the run. Approaching Stray will weave in between these torch hollows and then perform a convenient RTSR setup where we can just drop into the arena below for some fall damage and quit out. Then, dropping back in a second time, the second bit of fall damage puts us in RTSR range and we can unload on Stray Demon. In a lot of runs, you would definitely not want to do this routing with an early Stray Demon fight because he's pretty tanky. But as you can see, we are doing plenty of damage. Once he's down, we'll hit the ladder, run past the Black Knight and grab the doll, then bone back to Darkmoon Tomb. We'll go ahead and enter the Gwendolyn fight and take her out. Even though we're on our way to the painting, Gwendolyn's right here, so this is the best time for it. We'll dodge a barrage of homing magic and then get a nice RTSR setup by sprinting into a magic beam attack and then approach on the arrow shots to give us enough time to get off 3 Wrath of the Gods for a clean 1 cycle. After Gwendolyn is down, we'll turn around and continue towards the painting, carrying this RTSR setup with us. As you can see, the elevator here is already in the down position because of the quit out we did earlier in the run, so we don't have to call it back. We'll make our way through the painting room and then enter. Even though we're in RTSR range running through here, it's really not that dangerous of an area to get through if you know what you're doing. We just need to avoid some hollows here by the stairs, then avoid some bloatheads here and in this room as well. After this, we're home free as we're going to do a skip to drop down on some extended collision on the outer edge of this bridge. This one looks a little sus, but it is allowed for glitchless speedruns, I promise. Now we need to get down this bridge without being shot by the archers, so we'll do a quit out about halfway down to remove their aggro and avoid this knight on our way to the fog wall. Here we can show off a new strat for Priscilla that you may not have seen yet unless you've watched my previous videos. If you stand in this location and damage her, it will skip her going invisible and teleporting, so we can just spam lightning spears without having to play the find the boss minigame this fight usually features. Now that she's dead, we're ready to leave, and once we exit the painting, the game sets our last bonfire location to the Anor Londo bonfire, so we can just use a homeward bone to spawn there and get it for free without having to take it earlier in the run. Now that we have this bonfire, we can continue our quest of unlocking the DLC by warping to Undead Parish. We're on our way to Darkroot Garden, and we'll want the Crest of Artorias from Andre, but instead of buying it, we'll just blow him up with a couple of wraths. This will help us not only save 20,000 souls, but also it's pretty fast. Continuing on our way, we'll run past the enemies here and open the crest door, quitting out to not only skip the animation, but also to de-aggro the enemies chasing us, which will allow us to rest at this hidden bonfire. This bonfire is going to be our home base for the next several sections, and we'll go ahead and level up some more attunement, 14 intelligence, and the rest into faith, and then warp to Firelink, as this is a good time to go ahead and place the Lordvessel. The intelligence and attunement that we leveled is for a spell called Hidden Body that we'll get later, and the extra faith is basically for one major boss later on that we want exactly 65 faith for. We'll jump into Framp's pit, place the Lordvessel, and since we're low on souls, we can just dark sign back to save some bones. Even though now we want to unlock access to the DLC, while we're here we also want to take out everything in Darkroot, so we'll start with Seath. We can tank an attack from this knight here to put our health low enough that some fall damage will easily take us down enough for RTSR range. In a lot of runs, we'd pick up the stone armor in the chest nearby as it has some good utility, but we're not going to need it for this run, so we'll just go straight to the boss door, enter the arena, and activate the fight. This was just about as perfect of a Seath fight as you could reasonably ask for, as he let me get off 3 wraths before he begins to just walk away, so I can safely throw a single lightning spear to finish him off. We can then immediately dark sign again, saving another homeward bone, but keeping the souls that Seath will drop. Up next is Moonlight Butterfly, which is actually a more annoying fight than you might think because we're pretty low on HP and the lightning spears do take a while to get off. It's not worth setting up RTSR for this fight, so we need 3 spears to finish off the boss. I get interrupted during one of my lightning spears here, which is honestly pretty standard for this particular fight, and it's not a huge deal. Another boss down. Now we can actually begin the process of unlocking the Artorias of the Abyss DLC. The first step in this process is going to be taking out the nearby Hydra and Darkroot Basin. We can set up RTSR by getting hit by this same knight as before, then performing this jump to the bridge to finish our setup. Then we'll slide down the ladder to approach Hydra itself. This is definitely one of the best Hydra fights you'll see in a speedrun, as we can simply free aim 3 lightning spears and take him out super fast, as long as we don't miss, of course. Now that Hydra is down, the golden golem in the back of the lake will spawn after a quit out, which will be able to take him down in a single lightning spear to free Dusk and progress the DLC side quest. After saying yes to her, instead of warping back immediately, we're actually going to turn around and go to summon Dusk at her sign on the lakeshore. Partly because we can buy Hidden Body and a catalyst from her, but mostly because if you summon Dusk here, it will spawn her crown by the entrance to the DLC whenever we come back later. Even though it seems like it would only work for sorceries, her crown actually boosts sorceries, miracles, and pyromancies all by 20%. It might seem a little slow to summon her like this, but it is absolutely worth it, as the crown will more than make up for the time it takes to acquire it. After rolling all the way through the lake, we'll touch her summon sign and then clear out the crystal golems nearby while we wait. Then we'll go ahead and purchase Hidden Body and the catalyst before warping back to the hidden bonfire. The next step of unlocking the DLC is retrieving the broken pendant. So we'll warp to the Londo bonfire. Now that we've rescued Dusk, the crystal golem near the beginning of Duke's archives will drop the pendant on death. And while we're here, we also want to take care of Seath for another boss kill. Making our way past the boars, we'll take advantage of the downtime from riding the elevator and pop a boss soul. Then cast Hidden Body for the upcoming pendant golem kill. We'll unload all 3 wraths on him and get out of danger with only a single arrow worth of damage taken. Out of all the segmented runs I've done recently so far, this is the best pendant golem kill we've had. Continuing deeper into the archives, we'll hit the second elevator, but instead of progressing to the scripted death ahead that would send us to the prison, we're instead going to do a skip called Duke Skip to skip that section entirely, saving us about 3 minutes overall. There's even more parkour ahead where we can do this drop to skip taking the ladder here, and we're basically already done with the archive section. We'll pull the lever to drop the stairs and then equip the Dust Crown Ring to lower our maximum HP so that the fall damage in the next area doesn't do too much damage to us as we try to set up our health for the boss. We'll run down the crystal paths, taking a big drop here for some more fall damage, then run across the invisible floors and remaining paths on our way to the boss, swapping off the Dust Crown Ring once there are no more falls remaining. This next room with a bunch of clams is usually the trickiest part of this boss fight, but we have been blessed with Hidden Body, so we can just run straight through without a worry. Otherwise, since there's no fog wall here initially, they can easily get into the fight with you and cause a death. Once in the boss fight, we can break Seath's crystal with an arrow to remove his invincibility, and then several lightning spears will take him out before he can really do anything to us at all. And then we'll use a bone as he is dying to return to Darkroot Garden. Spawning back in at Darkroot, we're finally ready to move on to the next major objective, taking out all 4 bosses in the Artorias of the Abyss DLC. We already have the Dust Crown Ring equipped, which will help us set up our TSR for the first boss, Sanctuary Guardian. We just need to jump down from here to the bridge below, and then once we remove the ring, we'll be in our TSR range. Up until now, all the bosses in this run have been pretty easy, but the DLC bosses do provide a step up in power level, but luckily we have some backup firepower with the Crown of Dusk we can acquire right next to the DLC portal. Entering the fight will hug the left wall as it will reduce the amount of attacks that Guardian could potentially do, and he starts with the Lightning Barrage. We'll start up a Lightning Spear cast to strafe the last bolt and then roll out of the way, allowing us to blast him with our Wraths for massive damage. This was good RNG, but it definitely doesn't always go this smooth for this boss. Exiting the Guardian Arena, we want to refresh our spells for Artorias, so we'll go ahead and rest at this bonfire and level up to 64 Faith. Although in this run with the RNG he gives us, we didn't have to rest here, so technically this could have been a minor time save to run past this bonfire, but it's not a bad idea to do this since, depending on the RNG, you could potentially want all of your wraths for Artorias. We'll then make our way into the greater DLC area, the first of which is the Royal Wood that will take us to Artorias. We can go ahead and cast Hidden Body here to make our pathing through here a little more optimal without having to worry about these gardeners threatening us. Our health bar is low, so pretty much any of these enemies present a threat. After we get a preview of Calamite at this bridge, we'll refresh our Hidden Body on the final stretch to the elevator, which will take us down right next to Artorias' fog wall. But we won't enter the fight just yet. First, we want to set up Red Tearstone Ring, and we can do that with a jump down to the lower area, but because of this, we want to go ahead and visit Chester to buy a few more Homeward Bones and a Lloyd's Talisman for a Mimic coming up. Then we'll drop down to put ourselves into RTSR range, but while we're down here, it's faster for us to go ahead and activate Calamite. These dogs are pretty dangerous, but we can at least make it safer with our last Hidden Body cast. We want to run all the way down to the end of this pathway, run around this rock here, which will cause Calamite to swoop in. And as long as we don't reload immediately, we can just run straight back to Artorias, and this will credit us with having seen Calamite for the NPC Goth later on. This run back through the dogs is pretty sketchy, but the Grasscrest Shield helps us quite a bit to avoid getting killed. Coming up on Artorias here, we actually end up with a pretty cheesy fight on him in this run and could have avoided refreshing our spells because of this. We can get in basically a free lightning spear coming out of the fog wall, and then he does this jump opening so we can get in another spear while backing away. Then he gets confused and spins around before buffing as we continuously hit him with spears. Finally, he does another attack, and it's a jump that completely whiffs. So we get him with one last spear, and that's Artorias, I guess. Exiting the Artorias arena, we want to take the township bonfire so we can warp back to it later. And we can use the resting animation to begin leveling up some decks to improve our casting speed a little bit. We're going to be running through Ulyssil Township in order to make our way towards the Chasm of the Abyss. Casting Hidden Body about here to make this section a lot safer and faster, especially across this narrow bridge here. Arriving in this building, we'll take a short detour up these stairs towards the Mimic that contains the Crest Key, which we need to access the NPC Goth in order to shoot down Calamite. Dropping down to this balcony, we'll quit out to make the nearby enemy less aggressive and toss a Lloyd's Talisman at the Mimic as we stand up from the quit out, which is a bit faster than killing the Mimic. After picking up the key, we'll do another cast of Hidden Body as we approach one of the most dangerous areas in the game, Hellbridge. Luckily, with Hidden Body though, it's fairly chill and we can get through untouched, although here I actually had to dodge one attack from the Sorcerer. Then we just need to get past the Chained Prisoner blocking this hallway and send up the elevator to the chasm. Quitting out to send it to the top immediately and despawn the enemy that would normally be riding it. On reload, we'll continue by riding the elevator down and finally entering the Chasm of the Abyss, and we can use our final Hidden Body cast about here to protect us all the way to the boss. On the way, we'll do another ring swap with Dust Crown Ring to halve our HP, and then drop down from here for an easy RTSR setup, and then cross the Fog Gate for Manus. This Manus fight is honestly not that different from a melee fight, with similar punish windows, but with the added bonus of being able to throw the lightning spears from a distance. I'll get off all the Wrath of Gods as well eventually, but they honestly don't do that much more damage against Manus versus the lightning spears. Even though the long range nature of the spears is quite nice, the long cast animation is still a bit of an issue. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised how decent this fight was with miracles, and this was a pretty good example of it. Now that he's down, we can bone back to Ulyssil Township for the final DLC boss. Before we can take on Calamite, we need to unlock the door to Goth's tower and progress his dialogue to the prompt about shooting down the dragon. After confirming our response and skipping the cutscene, we'll warp back to Township again and begin running towards his arena. We'll cast our good friend Hidden Body again to run past these dogs safely, and then equip Dust Crown Ring on the fog wall for our HP setup, which is just going to be dropping down these platforms and removing the ring after landing on the ground. This fight, we're not going in with a set game plan of how to use our casts. It entirely depends on what Calamite does. The biggest issue I had with this boss was that the ranged casts from Lightning Spear weren't quite as good, as he's very effective at just reaching out to hit you before the animation ends. So we'll go back and forth between wraths and spears according to the openings we're given, and actually end up with a pretty good fight by the end of it. Once he's down, we can pop another boss soul as he dies and bone away. And we are now finally done with the DLC. Spawning back in at the township bonfire, we'll warp to Firelink Shrine and rest to make it our hub going forward, and this is a good time to spend our souls. So we'll level 15 Dex for more cast speed and 65 Faith to finish leveling out both of these stats. We're now going to begin the final phase of the run where we clean up the remaining bosses in the game. So we'll begin to make our way back towards the catacombs for the second time to finally take out Nito. Running through here is pretty much the same as before, except now we don't have to turn the lever to get through this passage, and we have Hidden Body for a bit of a comfier run through. We won't have any downtime to heal, so we're going to have to make sure the fall damage we take is factored into our RTSR setup for Nito as we make our way through Tomb of the Giants. Running through here without a light source might look intimidating, but with a bit of practice, it's really not that bad, and honestly, I find the movement to be pretty fun. Once we're out of the darkness, it's a pretty safe run up to the boss. We just have to make sure we don't get hit by this pinwheel on the far left and we're safe. On the fog wall, we'll equip Dust Crown Ring to limit the amount of fall damage we take as we drop into the arena, and cast Hidden Body. Once we land, we'll swap it off and start to chuck spears at Nito from across the room, as Hidden Body keeps us safe from the skeletons becoming aggressive. We just have to make sure we don't get hit by Nito's sword attack, and eventually he'll go down in 5 spears total. Now we can warp back to Firelink for the next boss. It's finally time for maybe the most difficult boss in this particular run, Four Kings. This boss is why we have been leveling our faith well beyond the soft cap all the way to 65 faith, as this next fight is all about reaching a certain DPS threshold. But we're going to be losing a major source of damage from our ring slot, as we have to switch the Ring of the Sun's Firstborn to the Covenant of Artorias to even enter the arena to begin with. We'll get into that more soon, but first we'll just make our way down to New Londo, cross the wooden walkways, and past the ghosts to arrive at Ingward. We need to get the key to the seal that he drops, but it's faster to just kill him, as he will drop the key directly to our inventory. We can use our bow to line up a lightning spear shot at a higher angle than normal and take him out with a single bolt for the key. Now we can lower the water while equipping the Covenant of Artorias and enter the boss fight while taking some drops to set up our health for Red Tearstone Ring. This fight is all about trying to get as few kings as possible, and we have a damage setup that allows us to finish them off in only 2 kings, which will save more than 20 seconds over having to wait for the 3rd king to spawn, since they all arrive on timers. But first we want to deal as much damage as possible without killing the kings, so we'll actually land 3 lightning spears without wearing the Crown of Dusk. Then when they only have a sliver of HP remaining, we'll equip our crown and blast them away with as much overkill damage as we can, since the larger health bar is still vulnerable while each king is in their dying animation. As you can see, they are already past halfway after just 1 king. The second king will spawn soon afterwards, and we can begin the same process again on this king, removing our crown to get him very close to dying but not quite there, then putting our crown on once we're ready. But we only have one more Wrath of the Gods remaining for our overkill damage and don't have enough time for another lightning spear. But with this setup, we can finish off the last remaining sliver of health with a single attack from our mace. And that's 2 kings. Now we can bone back to Firelink. Respawning back at Firelink, it's now time to take on the second to last major area of the game, Izalith. There are 4 bosses in this area, all relatively near each other, and with our current power level, they should be pretty easy. So we'll take the new Londo elevator down one last time and enter Blighttown for the second time in the run. We'll make our way down to the water wheel, into the swamp, and past Quelog's arena, all the way into the entrance of the demon ruins to rest at the bonfire, and we'll do our final level up to actually get some vitality for an RTSR setup we'll do later on. We're going to take on Ceaseless here first, and a ring swap plus this drop will give us an easy HP setup. We can aggro him with the lightning spear, and I get a little unlucky here with the double slam attack, but I still manage to avoid it and finish him off with our wraths for a quick 1 cycle. And then we can warp back to the bonfire to go deeper into Izalith. On the way to the next boss, Demon Fire Sage, we have the Dust Crown ring equipped, so we can drop from here and then remove the ring, then drop again here to put us into RTSR range. Then we'll avoid all of these enemies on the way to start the fight. We can use 2 Wraths on Fire Sage starting off, but we want to save the third one for a boss coming up, so we'll finish off the rest of the boss's HP bar using lightning spears from range as we back towards the exit. We'll then carry this RTSR setup to the next boss, Centipede, and since we have good damage, we won't have to really worry about refreshing our spells for this boss. Entering the fight, we'll hug the left wall and hope he does his arm attack, which he does, and we'll strafe it with a lightning spear to cut his arm for a stagger, then spam 2 more lightning spears before he can get to us for an easy and quick kill. Then we'll make sure to heal up to full as we head into the lava section of Lost Izalith and equip the orange charred ring to get through here safely. This area can be pretty annoying to get through for a lot of people if you don't know how to run through, so I always like to show off my pathing through, which is not only a pretty straight shot through the lava, but also is a very safe way to get through here without getting hit by these dragon butts that are littering the area. Now that we're out of there, we're approaching the penultimate boss of the run, the Bed of Chaos. Although this boss is well known for being a menace to casual players, we are going to reverse the roles and be the menace instead, with one of the best strats that exist in this game called Toki Bombs. Instead of having to interact with the intended mini-game experience of the floor falling out from beneath you as you try to go from one side of Bed of Chaos to the other, we will skip this experience by sprinting to a certain spot on the floor right in front of the tunnel that leads to the final phase and toss 2 well-placed bombs in order to break the orbs on both sides. Then we're free to enter the tunnel, branches, and roll all the way to the end and use our last cast of Wrath of the Gods on the bug at the center and then warp back. That's 25 bosses down, only 1 more to go. From here, we can go back to Firelink to jump into Framp's pit and finally offer all the Lord Souls to enter the final area, the Kiln of the First Flame. First, we're going to set up Red Tearstone Ring with the first Black Knight, as if we sprint into his aggro range, he usually does this stab attack, and with the 16 Vit we have, this gives us a healthy RTSR setup with plenty of room to take chip damage from Gwyn, especially since we'll have the fire-resistant Dragon Crest shield we picked up earlier in the run as well. We actually didn't end up up needing this shield because I changed some routing in the middle of the run, but it's only a minor time loss for a big boost in safety. But now there's nothing else to do but run past the Black Knights to Gwyn's Fog and parry his opening attack, then follow up with a Wrath of God. And then simply one more parry is enough to finish him off with 2 more Wraths, ending the run. And that's all 26 bosses defeated in under 80 minutes, with a final time of 1:19:18. This is by far the fastest run we've done in this series and the first one to go under the 120 barrier. I really think that not having to chase down upgrade materials and embers, plus being pretty high power level early into the run, really contributed to how fast this run was. I'm impressed. Miracles are pretty fast, but I do think there are faster builds to come in this series. Also, a big shout out to my Patreon. If you want to be involved in voting for what weapon class we should tackle next, any tier of paid membership lets you get involved, as well as access to early and extra content on the higher tiers. But that's going to be all for today, as we have Miracles taking the top spot in our ongoing series. But until next time, thanks for watching.